Welcome to another CEO Wisdom podcast. We have Jim Benson with us, the guy that coined the Kanban term. So it's going to be an interesting one. Him and I were discussing Hong Kong. Jim went 50 times to Hong Kong. I went once. I really enjoyed my stay. And we were talking about the lack of freedom of press there, which is sort of sad. The topics we're going to focus on today, mostly Kanban, I'd say. Speaking, authorship as well, where the Kanban movement has led Jim. Jim is CEO of Modus Cooperandi, founding partner at Modus Institute, and author at Personal Kanban, amongst other things. This podcast is brought to you by podpire.com, which is my podcasting agency. If you need help starting a podcast, scaling a podcast, monetizing a podcast, you can ring me up. You can go to podpire.com. Podcasts are amazing. Jim, welcome to the podcast. Can you tell me a bit more about yourself and about what you're up to nowadays?
Well, I'll try and make it as brief as possible. My real introduction just goes on forever. But for me, I've been a civil engineer, a business owner. I've built things as large as skyscrapers and subways and freeways, and I've built software, written books, and made music, all sorts of things. And what has always most interested me is the most successful projects I've been on are ones where people are informed and they can act and they can collaborate with ease. And anytime that there's an impediment to those things, that's where you end up with schedule, funding, and other confusion problems.
Let's start with your software experience, which is quite interesting. So Traffic 511, real-time traffic information web application. You also built Bus Speak, a transit signal priority management system, a transit web interface for rider bus carte, and Tree Pro urban forestry management software. So basically, you were in the dot-com boom, and you were like, I'm going to bring software to the world. Software is eating the world. So I'm going to take a bunch of use case and A/B test them. So tell us about that time of your life.
It was so fun. And so the first one you mentioned, 511.org, was the first real-time traffic website that used GIS. So anybody that uses Google Maps now, that was built on the concepts that we launched then. We did a lot of things that people said were impossible. So we made it, with what in the States is called Section 508 compliant. So people with so blind people could use the maps. So and this was in 2004, 2005, right? So this is a long time ago in software years. All of our projects were collaborations between us and different government agencies or different corporations, and everything that we did was new technology, new platforms, because everything was just being invented then. It was a beautifully both successful and highly creative time for me.
And what was the outcome of these startups? Did you get customers? Did you sell them? Did you close them down? What happened with them?
So it'd be hard. We did not close down any of the government agencies. So we were ostensibly software for hire, but we kept all of the IP that we created. And what would happen is an agency would come to us and they would say, we were having this weird problem with managing the scheduling of our buses. Or in one of them, it was that they had a system that where the buses would flash an infrared light at a traffic signal and it would give the bus priority. But every time the sun was in a certain location, it would be tripping that system nonstop. So we had to build those systems to fix that. So they were all logic problems. And we grew from just the two of us, William and me, to at the height of our organization was about 30 people. But we were really honest about how many people it took to build software, which meant our teams were very small and we just did good work. And what we didn't realize at the time was that that was very different in the software world. So the company that we took over 511.org for, that project, they had over 150 people working on the project. And we finished it all with 13. And so that was a big part of how I started my current career. You know, it was at Gray Hill Solutions that we invented the personal Kanban and Kanban world. It was there where we really tried out and tested these collaboration ideas, these collaborative management ideas, and since then we've taken them to the world. Worked on every continent almost every year.
Interesting. So what was the difference between Gray Hill and your time starting various well, actually Gray Hill was that agency, right?
That was a software company, yeah.
Yeah, and the transition to that was you advising various startup from your current experience. You came to startups and you were like, hey, do you guys need a consultant? I'll take some share of the companies. You can also pay me on a monthly basis. And you rolled that wave since 16 years now.
Yeah, so before all of that happened, I was a civil engineer and I was building freeways. I was building things that were obscenely big. So projects with billion-dollar price tags. So when startups were like, "Oh my God, I've got $4 million," I was like, "Wow, I used to spend that on paint." Your budget doesn't impress me. So what we brought to them was actual rigor in project management, and that wasn't like old school project management. It was just, look, if so I managed a major highway construction project with hundreds of people before the internet. Okay, so there's no email. It was faxes and phone calls, and somehow we got the highway built. You know, so the tools that we have now seem to have made people less able to communicate because we rely on them too much to build the relationships, and we don't build the relationships first so that we know what we're communicating and when and how. And if I had to say anything is like the core competency of what we do now, it's that. So come in, say, you know, what are you going to do? How do you want to do it? And then what is it that you need to know and when? And then we'll say, okay, well, this should go in Slack, this should go in Teams, this should go in this should go in that, whatever systems you're using. But we make sure that stuff is predictable and that everybody's job isn't being on Slack 8 hours a day saying, where is the this, where is the that? Hey, the other day we talked about this. What did we actually discuss? So getting people to remember those things. And we do that visually.
Interesting. And how did Kanban came about? Like, why did you invented or came up with that method to get more stuff done?
So there were two simultaneous business problems that were happening. So there was the Agile software development world. And in that Agile software development world was my friend and old colleague, David Anderson. And he had written a book called Agile Management. And it was a very detailed book, but it kind of read like a brick. And so we used to get together for drinks at the pub down the street here and talk about how to implement that. He at the time was at Microsoft and I was running Gray Hill, and we met every week and talked about things. And at one point we drew on kind of a napkin at Milady's pub over here the initial kind of sticks of what would become a Kanban. And Dave went off to do that at Microsoft in a large corporate context. And then I went off to do it in my context, which was more of the inventive, real-time information, highly variable work kind of context. And so he developed the Kanban method in that area. And then I developed what's called Personal Kanban in mine. And since then, the two of them have kind of worked together, you know, kind of like, I don't know, they fit together quite nicely. The actual origin story for Personal Kanban was that every morning in an Agile team, you get together in a huddle or a stand-up meeting, and you ask your people, What'd you do yesterday? What are you going to do today? And do you have any blockers? And it ends up that those are three horrible questions to ask. They actually don't give you any real actionable information. They just make you feel like you're informed. And so one day I said to my people, I was like, hey, every day you say that you're working on this new thing. Did you finish the thing you were working on yesterday? And they're like, no, because of blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, how about the thing you started the day before? Well, no, because of blah, blah, blah. And everything had a reason or an excuse about why it wasn't finished. So we took a bunch of Post-it notes like this and wrote down everything everybody was working on. We had a team of like 8 people and we ended up with like 200 Post-it notes. And I'm like, no, this has got to stop. So that's when we build our first WIP limited Kanban. We're like, okay, right now we're going to focus on a few things. We're going to finish them and we're going to do that until we're done with all the things we started. And we can't start anything new until all or mostly all of the stuff is gone. And the results were almost immediately that everybody became not just more productive, but calmer. Like the mood in the office changed 100% because everybody was like, okay, I see what I need to do. I see what everybody else is doing. I see where I can help, blah, 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 blah. So that's the origin story of Personal Kanban.
Okay, I have used Kanban probably since my Hong Kong years, which was like almost a decade ago, through Trello. And yes, like Kanban can help because it's like straight lines, and there's like fatherly categories, and then there's like
Yep.
these children's tasks in them. I quickly I outdid this system that wasn't efficient anymore because I put so many tickets in there. So then I thought, okay, automation, right? So like Trello had these power-ups and would automatically classify the tickets. And then I think what we get in the digital world, especially ADHD folks like me or like serial entrepreneurs, that we have too many notes that we write about, and it basically slows the computer to a halt. Like when I try to, and that's an M1 chip, I'm about to get the M3, but
Yep.
my calendar, for example, with 100 meetings a week, it just loads really slowly. And then the same thing happened with my second brain, which was Trello. So what do you recommend in that case? Is it like auto cleaning? If this ticket is not important enough, then it just is deleted by some bot. Like, how could I improve that on my side?
So there's 2 things here. The first is kind of the care and maintenance of the Kanban itself. But then the second thing is that you've already got a calendar, so you already know that your work requires more than one visualization. You have the kind of workflow visualization, you have the time-based visualization. So these visualizations live in a thing that is called an obeya. And an obeya is a room generally, but it can be a virtual room where all of the visualization, all of the information that you need to get a good job, your job done, resides. And so like in New York, we built beautiful obeyas for multi-billion-dollar construction projects where you had everything that was going on, all of the plumbing, all of the drywall, all of the everything that was going on, financial schedule, safety, everything was in one room. And then everyone was informed about everything that was going on. And then everybody made better decisions. When you're a solopreneur, it gets really hard to track all of the little things that you need to do. So I'm going to go be destructive. There we go. So over the last couple of months, we have been moving our online school onto a new platform. While we were doing that, we had very predictable mechanical work. Move this to here, edit it, make sure it's nice. Beautiful work in a Kanban. Since then, I've been getting caught up on everything else. So there's marketing, there's sales, there's dealing with my customers, there's dealing with students, there's administration. So this is what my Kanban has looked like recently. So I've got the stuff, the categories, and then I have the individual things that are happening in them that go by each day. And then at the end of each day, I review that, make sure that I've covered all of my bases, and I understand the narrative of the work that's happened over the course of the day. Otherwise, you just do all of these disparate tasks, and the day at the end is exhausting and it makes no sense, and you can't remember what you did. But if you just did it as just as a Kanban, I'll just go ahead and say it that way, what would happen is all those tickets would have flown into done, especially if they were in Trello. You would have shut off the computer and walked away and not known. So the physical nature of this for a solopreneur is pretty important for me.
Right. And then tell us about how you created a business empire out of that. So your books, your speaking gigs, consulting gigs with top companies. I think I read JP Morgan, and how did you build that?
So I've had the craziest career over the last 15 years. We've worked with government agencies and large companies and small companies and super creative people. We've worked with Nobel Prize winners. We've written infrastructure reports for like Vietnam. And so what happened was this book was the right book at the right time. And it still is the right time because it's never stopped selling. It's like 16 years of just plugging away. And what the Personal Kanban book is telling people is, here's a very fast way for you to organize not just your thoughts and your work, but your relationships with other people that you're working with. So you can calm the relationships, calm the conversations, calm the work, and actually focus on what you're doing. And the simplicity of this, just like we do another thing called Lean Coffee, which is like a meeting format that is, you invite a bunch of people to the meeting. The meeting has a topic, but no agenda. They get there, the people immediately spend about 4 minutes coming up with the agenda in a collaborative way. And then the meeting goes off. And the beautiful thing about that is it means that the agenda that's created is of value to everyone in the room. So no one's fighting to be heard because they've all figured out what needs to be talked about. Those two forms, more than anything, worked their way into just about every company on earth. And at some point, somebody in those companies has a weird, sticky problem, and then they call to help us solve it. And this could either be a problem like a problem with a product line, or it could be just a problem where we've got like a big project coming up and we don't know how to organize it, or it could be we started Agile, or we started Lean, or we started Prince 2 or whatever, Safe or whatever, and it's not working for us. Can you come help us with that? So what's been beautiful is that this has been so flexible that it's given the market a weird flexibility when they come to us to ask us to help them solve these types of things. We did that with almost no marketing because of both word of mouth and social media. Because we go to work at companies and instantly on Twitter, there would be all these pictures of Tony Ann and me working with these companies. And we didn't even know people were posting things. They're like, this is so fun. We're getting stuff done. This is effortless. and somehow that was helpful for us.
Yeah, I feel in the corporate realm, a lot of people feel they're wasting time, and it's not feel that they are actually wasting time instead of producing great results that could have their career advance. So they just like that, maybe they're too shy sometimes in a group to tell everyone that, look, this is a bullshit meeting and we should have more order, or maybe they just don't know how they could run a productive meeting and have been doing that the same way for years. And not only that, but when it comes to getting stuff done, especially at scale in a large team, can be really tricky to get stuff
Mhm.
done. So that's where your method can come in there. So I guess the first step in your funnel to get these big clients is the book. They read the book and then they just contact you by themselves on your website.
More or less, yeah, or through LinkedIn more often than not. This is what I find about what you just said is that when people will come to us and say, we have like a problem with prioritization. We can't prioritize anything. Or we have a problem where we have really terrible meetings. Or we have a problem where all of our projects seem to be late, or no one here will make a decision, or kids don't want to work today, or whatever that might be. All of those problems are invalid. Every single one of them is not a real problem. It is a symptom of a deeper problem, which is that there is something in the workflow or in the culture or in the combination of the two that is creating a bottleneck of decision making, or a bottleneck of information flow, or a bottleneck of certainty. And so people will wait to act until they have information, or they know that they can safely make the decision, or that they have certainty around what their action should be. And frankly, often that's because upper management hasn't sat down with everybody and set up a process where people can have agency. They can have psychological safety. You can't just tell people. You can't send people to a psychological safety class and have them get it. It's not something you learn. It's something that you build together. It's a collaborative act.
Hmm. Psychological safety. That's interesting. I guess I always had it. I was an entrepreneur since day one, and I never minced my words or thought about what doing or participating or question my own value or my IQ. It's surprising that in big organizations and high performance organizations such as JP Morgan, you would have that, but you confirm
Oh,
it's
in
the case.
spades. Oh, yeah. No, bad acting rules most large corporations much more than an entrepreneurial spirit, shall we say. And that acting is often reinforced by the management style and the processes that are in place. So if you have a process that says basically you can do a bunch of things and then you have to wait for a decision, that decision making bottleneck destroys psychological safety, just hands down, because you can't act until then, which means you start questioning all of your actions and waiting for decisions on more and more of them. So organizations that we found that have become sluggish, that the way out of that sluggishness is to do something that we call create a right environment, which I saw the most at Turner Construction in New York. So this isn't like something that I'm just making up. But before they start any large construction project, which, as I said, is like billions of dollars. So for them, one project is more than most companies on earth see in an entire lifetime. Before they start that project, they get together all of the people who are going to be working on it, and they say, what do we need to do a professional job? And sometimes that's really technical things, like I need training in this new type of software, to this new construction management software. And other times it's, we need a dog.
Right.
And what I appreciated about Turner was like when at one of the projects they said we need a dog, they got a dog. It's like, okay, we get it. You have to commute for hours to get to this job site. You need something to look forward to when you get there. There's your dog. It's not like it cost the company $100,000 to get the dog, right?
Didn't. Yeah, nice ROI right there. So nowadays, how do you split your time between consulting, between writing books, between speaking gigs? How do you split up your day?
Um, so it was funny because before COVID, I was on a plane. I was not at this desk ever. I was gone 3 weeks out of 4, and the week that I was back was usually running around town doing all of the errands that needed to be done or paying attention to my wife. And with COVID, all of a sudden I was here all the time, so my routine changed tremendously. So my typical day now is I get up at about 5:30 in the morning. I will make myself a nice breakfast and watch the sunrise. Although it's Seattle, so the sun doesn't rise until 8 o'clock now. And then I come upstairs. We'll quickly answer email, and then basically that initial part is client time. So I just figure out, like, are your clients okay? A lot of our clients are in Europe, so a lot of those meetings end up being early. And then that tends to end at about 9 a.m. And then from 9 to noon, it's all focused on our online school. And then from that point on, it's all I try to focus mostly on the other stuff on that very long list of stuff to do. So that might be writing, it might be what whatever's coming up that day. But what I've found now is that all of a sudden I have a rhythm to my day that I haven't had in a very, very, very long time. And so I used to do all of that other stuff on planes, and then when I get off the plane, it would be all clients all the time. When we do a right environment exercise with a client, they take 5 days, even if they are online. And so that obviously jumbles up that schedule a bit, but we try and do those once a month. So inverted the 3-week thing. Yeah, so that is my average day. And I have to say, I get better coffee, I get better sleep, but I don't walk the streets of Paris, or I'm not, I'm not running around South Africa anymore. And that I do kind of miss that, but I did learn I didn't miss the flying as much as I thought I would.
Right. And how do you get your team to get stuff done? Because you're not alone into this. Is it about organization? Is it about culture? Is it about picking them right from the get-go? Any systems involving the human psychology and the technical aspect of Kanban that you use to get more stuff done in the company?
Yeah, and about visualizing the work. Yeah, so I don't want to answer that. So there's like three things about that. The first thing is that no team is ever going to do a good job for you if they don't know what they're doing. So we make sure that all of the work is visualized in one way or another, that we meet at least once a day, that everyone has Slack open, the whole time they're at their desk, that we try and collaborate on as many things as we possibly can. So, we're doing a marketing plan, that no one is going to go off and do a marketing plan and bring it back and present it to the rest of the people. We're going to set aside 2 or 3 hours, and we are all going to blast through on the marketing plan together. We end up spending 12 hours instead of ostensibly 8, but there's no comment at the end, right? So there's 3 of us working for 4 hours on this thing, and at the end it's just done. So in a half day we will blow things out the door. So the best thing about setting up collaborations is that work actually does get done faster. And I know that about half the people listening probably laughed or said, what? But when you collaborate, you actually get work done faster, because you take all of those comment loops out. So yes, the initial meeting might take longer than it would have taken you to type something, but in the end, you get the end product much faster and in a much less painful way than you did before. So we end up as a small group being extremely productive. And I took that from both my engineering days and my Gray Hill days, which is, make sure that work items are clear and not clear to you, but clear to the people doing the work, and that the clarity that they have is also clear back to you. So when we do visualize that work, it's a huge part of that. We use Miro a tremendous amount for our Obeas, our Kanbans, everything are in Miro, and then in another product called iObea, which is a French product. And between those two, we're able to do kind of the brainstorming work and the management work very smoothly. And we find that if we've ever asked a question more than once, we will stop and we'll say, why did this question need to be asked again?
Right.
Yeah.
And then to determine like what's the top to do, I guess having a system to A/B test these to-dos, test the impact that they have in the context of a business is the economic impact mostly, and judge how it trickles down the full organization, brainstorm with the other member of the team, because priorities are always a priority, right? Like if
Right.
you have a ticket that you put on top, but it's not urgent, it's not important. I think we need to step up the Eisenhower matrix, what I'm saying.
Yep.
Just measure the impact scientifically on each to-dos, and like once we have that system up, execute the most important item and go on with the next one after that, and then maintain these to-dos that were done in some kind of system, or have bots automate them.
What I can say to that is that almost every company on Earth spends most of its time being inept. And just in brevity, I will say that. And so we end up spending most of our time asking questions for things that have already been decided, searching for information, or not being able to act in a timely manner. And so the most important thing for any group to do is to say, what things do we need to do? What information do we need? What technology do we need? What blah, blah, blahs do we need in order to get our work done quickly and effectively? And then build not just a culture, but systems that support that culture. So when you ask those questions, those are cultural questions, but those cultural questions then need to be implemented with something that you can do and measure. And I will tell you right now that the most important measure of my personal success in the entire history of my career did not come when there was a major fiery accident in San Francisco and use of the 511.org system went 25 times above the projected peak usage of the system, and the system didn't even slow down. That's a great metric. We made it, and that's good. But my favorite metric is that at the Coney Island Hospital Project in New York, when they had been using Kanban and Obeas and had been working with us for several years, when COVID hit, every other team in the company was like, what do we do? And they called back to the home office and said, what do we do? That team went into their Obeya and said, how do we respond to this? They didn't wait for somebody else. They came up with a plan, and that plan became the basis for the way that every other Turner construction project on Earth dealt with the COVID crisis. So you definitely want ROI, but you want to make sure that you've created a culture that is resilient so it can deal with problems when they come up and not immediately fold because you've built a process or a culture that's based around like productively completing stuff predictably, that they're able to deal with the unpredictable. That's what I'm looking for.
Jim, where can people find out more about you in 5 seconds? Because this meeting is ending.
I am on LinkedIn. I'm Jim Benson on LinkedIn, and also at Modus